Okay, so reading the last section of the book, I was thinking about Magnus and his life and thoughts about the British. Most of the book is focused on the atrocities of the Japanese and the CTs, but Magnus reminded us that the British were also responsible for atrocities. So I'm going to briefly touch on the Opium Wars mentioned by Magnus in the last section, as they seem relevant to today's fight against fentanyl and what's happening with the drug wars. And then a short look at the Boer Wars, which also directly affected Magnus and his life. And then I'm going to finish up with a few pictures of Horimonos, just so you can see those, since it's a huge part. So the Opium Wars, Britain primarily obtained its opium from India, where the British East India Company established a profitable monopoly over poppy cultivation, especially in the Bengal region. And they used the opium trade to address a significant trade imbalance with China. The British traded opium for silver. So the Chinese would only buy things in silver from the British. So when the British wanted tea or silk or porcelain or any of those things, they had to pay for it with silver. And so because the Chinese, there was nothing they wanted from the British. So the British had to figure out how to get the silver. So they would trade the opium to smugglers for silver, so that then they would have that to buy back. So this basically came from a trade imbalance. And as they did this, so what they do is, in this next photo here, this is all opium stacked in shelves in these round balls that it was sold in, and you can see the massive quantity of it. So for the silver, British merchants sold opium to Chinese smugglers in exchange for silver. And this was especially true after the British East India Company monopoly on trade with China ended in 1833, which then led to the boom in the opium trade. To finance the purchases, the silver obtained from the opium trade was then used to purchase luxury goods, famously the tea from China, which the British was slowly really getting into Chinese tea. Before the opium trade, Britain had a significant trade deficit with China because they were buying so much tea. Opium sales to China helped to balance this. To generate revenue, the opium trade provided substantial revenue for the British government in India and the East India Company, helping to finance their rule and their expansion there. To honor Kendall tonight, I have a couple political cartoons here. And this first one is a cartoon showing John Bull on the right, who's the British, holding the Chinese at gunpoint and forcing opium on them. China repeatedly attempted to stop the trade of opium. Matter of fact, it was banned in China, and the British didn't care. They thought that was unfair trade policy not to let them sell opium to them. And so they used their military force to achieve their goals. And an interesting aside, this morning I listened to the C.S. Harris books, which Kendall got me on, and Peter as well has been reading them. And it's a series of books, historical fiction about the Victorian era, taking place between about 1811 and right now I'm up to 1814. And in today's episode, Driving to Work, the man who works for the British East India Company was talking about the fact that they had stopped not allowing the Indians to plant any grain because they needed to plant all opium to make money. And so when there came a famine, there was no food for the Indians to eat, and about 1 million Indians died. And the guy in the book said, that's okay, India's overcrowded anyway. That was his answer to 1 million people dying of starvation. So the first Opium War was fought to force China to accept opium trade. And then the second Opium War was fought to expand that trade further into China, leading to the opening of more ports and foreign access to the interior. So through Canton and bombing the harbors, the British just bowled their way in to sell it. And the treaties that ended the wars didn't explicitly legalize opium, but they forced China to open up more ports and allow foreign traders to access remote areas, which made the trade much easier for the British to conduct. So that's just a little bit about I fell into a hole this week. There was so much stuff I read about, and then I was like, this will be like a 9-hour presentation. So I've scaled back. The Boer Wars. So here we have a photo of some Boers, the farmers. Boer meaning farmer is the common name for the Afrikaans-speaking white South Africans descended from the Dutch East India Company settlers at the Cape of Good Hope, which is interesting in the light of, if you recall, Trump in May allowed white South Africans to enter the United States when we're putting out all immigrants, and 59 were admitted in May, and they're descendants of these white farmers from the Boer Wars. So the first Boer War took place it was very short, 1880 and 1881, and this was caused by Britain annexing the Transvaal And then a dispute over taxes actually caused the First Boer War. And then the Second Boer War was 1899 to 1902. So first we're going to look from the First Boer War, and I thought this was mostly tied to the book, because this is the Battle of Majuba Hill, which Magnus, of course, named his Majuba tea plantation after this. Took place on February 27th, 1881. It was a massive defeat for the British. So, matter of fact, it was the worst defeat ever for British forces. The British rifles were sighted at 400 to 600 yards, while unfortunately the battle was raging at 50 to 100 yards. So the British troops were firing over and past the Boers that were coming up the hill. And so the officers never bothered to tell the British officers to re-sight their guns. That's one of the many problems they had in this battle that was all taking place on a hill. So General Colley, who was in charge of it, he was in his tent, not paying any attention to what was going on, and officers came to tell him how badly the battle was going. And what turned out was, of course, young farm boys from the Boer farms were great marksmen, and they outshot the professional soldiers, which totally humiliated the British. The battle took place between 400 Boers and 405 Brits. And the Boers lost 2 people were killed and 6 were wounded. And the Brits, 92 were killed, 134 wounded, and 59 captured. So this was really just a group of ragtag farmers, and this was what ended the First Boer War, which was very short. Okay, the cause of usually when they refer to the Boer War, they're talking about the Second Boer War, which now apparently we need to call the South African War, because people want to refer to it because it affected everybody in that part of Africa, not just the Boers weren't the only people involved. Native South Africans were involved as well. But the Boer War was caused by a combination of factors, primarily British imperial ambition, wanting to take over more and more ground, the desire to control the newly discovered gold that was found on the Witwater Strand, which clashed with the Boers Republic, a desire for independence. Tensions were exacerbated by the refusal of the Boer leader, Paul Kruger, to grant political rights to the Uitlanders, which are foreigners, mostly British. He made it so they had to live there for 14 years before they could vote. Which didn't give them a whole lot of power during this gold rush. And also the aggressive stance of British High Commissioner Alfred Milner. The Uitlanders had to wait for, the conflict was also fueled by the British aim to confederate the region's British territories and the Boer republics into a large single territory under British rule. And here you can see our 2 competing people that we have with the mustache and no hat is our British man, Alfred Milner. And then on the right in the top hat, that is Paul Kruger, who was leading the South African group. So as you remember, Magnus talking about their scorched earth policy. So what happened was when they started the Second Boer War, in the end, the British started with about 15,000 troops. And in the end, they had 450,000 troops there. And they were not succeeding in a regular form of battle because the Boers switched to guerrilla fighting. And so when they switched leaders to Lord Kitchener, who came in and Lord Kitchener in the March of 1901, initiated a series of systematic drives aimed at killing, capturing, or wounding the Boers. These were organized similarly to a hunting expedition, with success measured by a weekly bag of casualties. Kitchener also sought to sweep the country bare of everything that could give sustenance to the guerrillas, such as livestock, women, and children. Historian Thomas Pakenham describes the last phases of the war as being dominated by the clearance of civilians uprooting a whole nation. Farms were destroyed by the British under their scorched earth policy, including the systemic destruction of crops, the slaughtering and removal of livestock, the burning down of homesteads and farms in order to prevent the Boers from resupplying themselves from a home base. And this is, of course, what happened to Magnus's family. His farm was burned down. Now here, as this happened, many tens of thousands of men, women, and children were forcibly moved into concentration camps. So not just the Japanese with their internment camps. Here you see a picture of the British concentration camps. And eventually authorities built a total of 45 tented camps for Boer internees and 64 additional camps for Black Africans. The vast majority of Boers who remained in the local camps were women and children. Between 18,000 and 26,000 Boers perished in these concentration camps due to diseases and starvation. The young lady you see on the right is Lizzie Van Ziel, a Boer child who was visited by Emily Hobhouse in a British concentration camp. So you can see how horrible the conditions were there. So here we have a German political cartoon, and at the top it says England under war in South Africa, and at the bottom it says home of the I'm sorry, let me get my thing here. Western capitalism and the transformation of human blood into gold. That's what it says below. And so you see here the British on my left, I'm sure left, but you see the British leaning on the tank with the blood and all the soldiers fighting. And then on the other side, of course, is coming out all the gold they're gathering. And if you look in the background, you see all the bags of gold piling up for the various people, the chartered people like the East India Company, the Rothschilds. In the way back, you see the Prince of Wales is represented there, and then also the Duke of Fife, another person. These are all people that were benefiting, getting the gold out of all these people that were being murdered in South Africa. So this was in a German magazine at the time. And the British did not come out well at the end of the Boer Wars. People were really shocked by the conditions of the concentration camp and their scorched earth policy. So that's just a little bit about that. With Magnus passing away in this part of the book, I thought I'd do a little bit to sort of talk about his situation. And now for some horimonos. So as we know that Yun Ling had a horimono placed on her back, this is a chance for you just to see some horimonos and how detailed and complicated they are. Here's another one. The colors are amazing. And this is just unbelievable artwork. And then this one. So I thought it was worthwhile seeing a few of them. And I looked them up right away, actually, to sort of get a visual, even though we couldn't see everything that was on hers. All right, so I'm going to stop the share here. There we go. All right.
That was great, Ginny. Thank you.
Yeah, well done, Ginny. Wow.
You know, I don't know if anybody has even noticed. I mean, duh, it takes me a while after having read the book several times, but there was a movie made of it.
Yes, I just found that out. HBO did it. Is it on HBO now? Can you get it?
I'm really not sure. All I noticed was that, I mean, it got pretty much panned.
Oh.
Well, but I think you can kind of understand. It's such an internal book. I mean, it would be very hard. I mean, I'll try to watch it. I mean, I'm not sure what streaming service had it, but yeah, I think it was 2019. And it didn't get great reviews, and the reviews I read were mostly concerning the impossibility of really truly representing that book on film. And that makes sense, to me. So here we are, we're at the end. And there's so damn many questions that we probably have for the end of it. I mean, I just gave you 5 because I was trying to limit myself, because I would, and then you can see here, I had to add, 10 more. But anyway, is there one that, well, first of all, it's always your chance to throw out your question first. So if you'd like to do that, absolutely. And otherwise, let's choose one of the ones I came up with to start our discussion.
If no one has one of their own, I want to know people's thoughts on why she has to destroy her tattoo to keep the garden.
Well,
That didn't make any sense to me.
Critical, and it's okay. Okay, so let's take a look at the context of it on page.
I think a lot of that I'm just going to jump in here. A lot of it has to do with the fact that I believe what we thought was that Aritomo was all in on the golden lily, and her tattoo and the garden. If you had both of those, you would know where the treasure was buried and where her sister was, Yun Hang. That it actually, the garden itself and the Harimono would show you how to get to the golden lily where it was. And he did it for her so she could find her sister. And that's why he did it and left. But she didn't want anybody else to find her sister or the gold. So she said, this has to be destroyed because somebody's going to figure this out. Because Tatsuji sort of was the one who put her onto the fact that Aritoma may have been working for the emperor all along in the Golden Lily situation.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, that
That-
was my read too, that she couldn't leave behind a treasure map to this.
To get to her sister, basically,
to-
and the
yeah.
gold.
Okay.
But it is, I like the parallel that the gold and her sister are one. Like the thing that everybody was like, I guess for lack of it, like the MacGuffin that everybody was seeking, her sister, the gold, all of that was really all in the same place. They were all seeking the same thing, just for different reasons in different ways.
Well done, well said.
And in terms of the forgetfulness, she's choosing what's going to be remembered and what's forgotten, and she's choosing to have all that forgotten.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the quote is on 331. The garden must continue to exist. For that to happen, the Horomono has to be destroyed after my death. I cannot entrust that responsibility to anyone, not Tatsuji and not Frederick. I'll have to do it myself. So there's a kind of empowerment there at the end. So,
Oh, sorry.
go.
Just wondered, I mean, she wanted to find where her sister was. That was her biggest thing. Where's my sister? I need to give her, peace and all. And if he knew where she was, why didn't he tell her? That was her biggest thing. Why didn't he tell her? If that's what he knew, I kind of interpreted it that way also, but why didn't he tell her?
Great question.
Did he probably didn't know until she told him what happened to her, right? Like
That's a good point.
that was like when they were on the mountain and she explained the story, especially when he said like what was in the boxes. She's like, well, it couldn't have been weapons because then they would have come for them when they were losing. So he didn't know until that point. And I think if my chronology is right, it's shortly after that when he starts working on the tattoo and starts working in through his head as to how to kind of share that with her.
Agree. Yeah.
And also, if we can assume that he indeed was a part of Operation Golden Lily, then he probably was putting his duty to the emperor higher than everything else and holding on to that as more than life itself. And it kind of parallels Tatsuji's story about how he was willing to get into the plane at even when he knew that that was going to be going to his death. And he, I think at some point said something like, I have to do this. Like it's his obligation to. So we see that Aritomo may, at some point, like Rachel said, once he knew her story, he may have put the pieces together, but then could not step down from like that position of honor to take her there. That would be against everything he had kept secret till this point.
I'm curious what you guys think about this, because I still don't know fully what I think about him. I think there's so much ambiguity that I'm still sort of toying with his character, but it's the part when what's his name, Tatsuji says, look at the story where it's the archer and usually they leave one son, but actually in this version the archer is dressed not in Chinese clothes but in Japanese clothes, and he's shooting down the remaining son, which to me gave, because he says it looks just like your flag, the Japanese flag. So to me there was also some like tension in Ari what is his name? Oh my gosh.
Aritomo.
Aritomo's loyalties there. So I thought that was really interesting. I'm curious what you guys think about that, and if you were sitting with the ambiguity as much as I was, or if you feel like he had a more, I don't know, a more clear-cut sense of duty and loyalty.
That's a great question because it's something. Well, it's not great because I thought of it too, but it's. But I just think as I ended the book, it was like, oh God, because there's a certain arc. This doesn't end in Youngling's Mighty Avenal, New Jersey. The hell is Avenal, New Jersey? I mean, I didn't even. But anyway, but I was thinking too. I mean, there's a certain arc with Yun Ling's character. I mean, even though we're always going back and forth from the past, the present, and then a new present. But yeah, I mean, that's why I asked the question: what questions do we still have about Aramoto? I mean, you know, is he ultimately an admirable character? Like, what sort of character, as we end the book, do we think of him? How do we think of him? How do we think of Aramoto? And why is it that we think the way we do?
I think in many books you have a real relationship with the character.
Mhm.
In this book, for me, I the worlds were so different, the experiences were so different, and I felt every character was a little bit kept at a distance from me. So I could understand, like we talked about, I could empathize, I could try to envision, but there was always a shroud of mystery with all of them.
Mm.
If I can just add a personal note, my husband is half Japanese, and his mother was a young woman during World War II, and her sister was engaged to a young man who wound up being called to be a kamikaze pilot. And instead of going through the mission, my mother-in-law's sister and this man committed suicide together. So they had a double suicide pact. And why I bring it up is that, yes, it was horrific, very tragic. My mother-in-law had her sister's diary, and it was one of her lifelong goals to translate her sister's diary, and she never could complete it. She never could do it. I think again, just the rawness, and that's what I found in this book. The memories and how raw everything is, and what it does to people, what it does to their families.
That's really excellent. That's really excellent. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating too, and I think it also points out that cultural gap
Mhm.
of the whole idea of honor, and in Japanese, having watched Shogun and reading this book, but the idea that when you can't fulfill what you need to do, the honorable thing is to kill yourself. And their suicide pact, whereas here we would think like that's horrible. Why would you do such a thing? But in the Japanese culture, that's seen as an honorable way
Mhm.
to end your life. And that's so foreign to us. I mean, at least, I'm always just amazed by that. And people do it, they have a second standing waiting with them. So in case the blade doesn't get where it needs to be, they're gonna end it for them. Uh, and we have the example in this where, Tatsuji's father, commits seppuku. So it is an interesting thing. I appreciate your pointing that out, Karen, because I think people don't realize how much not everybody in Japan agreed with what was happening. And, rather than participate in the war, they chose an honorable way to end it, even though it seemed, so tragic.
Well,
Maybe that's why, oh, sorry, go ahead.
even with the pilots, they had this agreement and they took that responsibility to be kamikazes. But one of the questions I had about the story of the kamikaze pilot was he lost the group and his plane failed and he had to get a new motor. So he was still going to go and have a mission by himself. The rest of the guys had left already, but he was still going to go ahead and try and do something. So
That's
Yeah, he wouldn't even back down when they knew it. Actually, at the point that Terrazin took off in the plane, the war was already over. I mean, as he was flying, the bomb dropped. So they knew they were already losing, and he wasn't necessarily going to get anywhere with that. But they had to finish their mission because that's what they needed to do. But I was thinking on what MG said about Aritomo. and that story about shooting down the sun, I was wondering if they were thinking like that was the fall of the Japanese Empire, whereas before there was always one sun left, or one moon left. It was a moon, one moon left, or was it the sun? The sun, because it was burning the earth. One sun left, to keep the world lit. And they always say the sun never sets on the British Empire, but the sun set on the Japanese Empire when the war ended. And I wondered if that shooting out that last one was the loss of the war and Japan losing everything.
See, I kind of took that a little bit differently because he didn't start the Haramoto until he heard that the United States had left Japan. Like
Okay.
it was no longer occupied Japan. I almost took that as that Aratomo was the archer and his loyalty, the son was his loyalty to Japan. Because I think the whole time he is walking that line between two loves, between her and his country, and he cannot choose. Like I don't, I think he goes back and forth and he leaves instead of having to make that choice. But I think that was him squaring with his, drawing this artwork on one person that he loved about his, potential betrayal, but he hasn't shot it down yet because it's still there on her skin. But he doesn't tell her, he gives her the tools, but he doesn't not tell her in the same way. So I think instead of actually choosing between these two kind of impossible things, he just leaves because I don't think his conscience or honor would allow him to make either decision without kind of destroying himself.
The same thing with what you're saying. I thought that maybe he sort of broke his honor by leaving her the clues in her tattoo, and that the only way he could deal with breaking the honor to his country was to kind of go off and commit suicide or whatever he did. So I kind of went along with what you were saying.
Very good, yeah.
Or maybe didn't want to confront and having to do something to Yun Ling if they were to come, like the emergency's happening and it's surrounding them kind of. And who's to say if we're talking about his loyalty being unwavering as it is, maybe he stepped away before he had to do something that he really did not want to do at all. Interrogation wise, who knows? Like it's possible that he stepped away to avoid all that because he didn't want to cross the line with Yun Ling whenever that came to it, if it came about.
Especially because that's the mystery of like if he's still a spy or still working for the Empire. Yeah.
So since this, I think it connects, and I'm not really sure that I'm never really sure that I have the answer to anything, but what about that dream on page 330? How does that connect to our understanding of both Yunling and Aramoto? So, sort of about 2/3 down the page, I remember how for a long time after Aratomo disappeared, the same dream kept recurring to me, staining my waking moments like the faintest of watermarks. I stopped having it once I moved away from Ugarian, and I forgot all about it. In the dream, I watch Aratomo walk on a path in the rainforest, pushing aside the overhanging branches and vines. Here and there, the path narrows or crumbles into the river. He is not far ahead of me, and I have the feeling that I am pursuing him, quietly, stealthily. Several times he slows down, as though allowing me to keep him in sight. Not once does he look back. The path ends in a clearing, and there he stops. Slowly he turns his entire body around to face me. He looks at me, not saying anything. It is at this point that I realize I am carrying a bow, his bow. I feel it stretch and strain as I take up the stance in preparation to shoot, the stance he taught me to perfect. I raise the heavy bow, pull the bowstring, and aim straight at him, my arms, chest, and stomach quivering with the effort. Still, he does not move or speak. I release the bowstring, and even though there is no arrow, still he falls. Still he falls. What did you make of that? I mean, we're right at the very, very end of the book, and she brings this up.
It's an echo of his episode, which you saw him shoot without an arrow, and
Yes.
he said he hit the mark, and
Yes.
she in effect is doing the same thing. She's killing him in her mind.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay, keep going with this, guys.
But the top of that page,
Yes.
she talks about the last time she saw him was almost 40 years ago.
Mhm.
So as we go through the book and her life, clearly when she met him, she was having mental or memory issues, and now she's been around 40 years longer, and she's still somewhat lucid.
No, in the beginning, when she met him, she was like 19. And
I'm just saying it's here. She says, last I saw Aratomo almost 40 years ago.
that was after he disappeared. Then she went away and had her whole career as a judge.
Right, but I'm saying that she still has her mental faculties.
Right,
Mhm.
because the aphasia is getting ready to kick in at the end of the book. She's finished writing her memoir, and she has that one instance, I forget what page it was on, where suddenly, everything went blank and she didn't know where she was. It hasn't started, she's had episodes, but not complete takeover.
But her concern in the beginning was that this was going to be very accelerated. I just
It
felt like
was, but that didn't happen. I mean,
Right.
they said to her it could happen instantly, like suddenly she would know nothing, or it could come in little stages. And throughout the book, she had a couple little episodes
Right.
where she couldn't read something that was there, but it hadn't taken her over. She was able to stay lucid because at the end, she still says, my job will be to, keep this garden open and I want to get everything done.
Right.
So she's still lucid enough to try to keep things going. She hasn't lost, her mind yet, but she could at any moment. I mean, she needs to work quickly about things she wants to get in place.
So, as like when she starts learning from him, and he's like, you can't write anything down, and
Mhm.
whatever. I feel like that's like walking on the path, and he's not turning around, and she's just like following him. And then, when they get to the clearing, I don't know. That's like what's going on there. But I feel like that path is when, like, the journey of learning from him and him kind of like, she's kind of like following him and, you know, just learning through like watching and experiencing. And then she does learn like how to shoot the bow from him and everything. And then, yeah, why does she
So
kill
yeah,
him?
It's
keep going.
sorry. I mean, I'm just thinking we talked about the borrowed scenery the last 4 or 5 weeks, and it's almost like he remains so elusive because he's being built through everybody's vision of him, and it's obscure. The mess, the words we're talking about. I mean, his character almost seems to be built from borrowed scenery,
Mm. Okay.
which
I
suicide. Did he vanish? You never know. Which
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I'm just reading this and rereading it, and the thing that comes to mind is I'm calling it now, his quiet intentionality. Like everything he's doing has been so intentional and so subtle. Like in her dream here, like several times he slows down, but he doesn't look back. It's like he's sort of leading the whole time in a very quiet but very intentional way, which is also why to me I feel like his ambiguity by the end of the book, I wanted more because I knew that everything he was doing was so, or to me at least, it felt so intentional. He was, even some of his training with her about the garden, the symbolism that he was infusing into his explanations to her all felt so intentional. So it almost feels, I don't really know as far as the ending. I mean, you could say it's reflective of their relationship in general. Like he's giving her the tools to sort of like knowingly somehow to kind of like metaphorically test his loyalty. And but it feels also like there's more there at the end. Her using his bow specifically feels like a bit loaded for me. So I don't know exactly what I think about it. I'm still parsing out the last part, but yeah, this like sense that he was always somehow in control of what he was doing, even though his movements were ambiguous to her or to us.
Yeah.
I also feel like he was, he was leading her on the path to understanding and having her follow him. And in the end, when she shoots the arrow, which he taught her how to do, like he's led her to go on with her life and use the bow and arrow thing to, to sort of focus on what it takes to move ahead. And when she shoots and he falls, he falls so that she can go on without him and that he's fulfilled his purpose for her.
Yeah,
He's
and
led
that
her to the place where she needs to be. He showed her how to shoot the arrow with her eyes closed, whether there's an arrow there or not, and move it ahead to the target. And now he's gone and she needs to move on without him.
yeah, understanding the impermanence. I think that's part of it. That's his like final lesson maybe that she realizes is that his whole thing is that the beauty is there because of the impermanence. That's what makes things beautiful for what he's talking about, the Japanese aesthetic and the ancient ways and everything like that. So maybe maybe that has something to do with it, that she's finally kind of crossed that path to say, even if I go, even if you kill me, you still have everything that I taught you, you can still carry on, etc. Maybe
Very,
that's part of it.
very
Reminds
Star Wars, Derek.
That reminds me of a story I heard about like how Buddhism views itself of like Buddhism is a canoe that you use to cross the river, that you need it to get across the river, but when you're on the other side of the river, you don't take the canoe with you because it weighs you down. That like the whole point of Buddhism is to get in some forms. I'm not a Buddhist, but I know in some forms of it, you have to even give up like when you reach nirvana or the ultimate aims of Buddhism, it includes giving up Buddhism in a sense to get like to give away everything about the earth. So that's almost I saw that when they were talking about how there's that Buddha in the corner of the garden and it's there of like maybe Aratomo in that sense is he is the canoe leading her across, teaching her everything she knew. And then once she got to the other side, she didn't need him anymore and she could then kind of progress. I think as I think MG said about grow, and she learned everything. It's time for her to be herself now.
And she also said, I stopped having it once I moved away from Yuguri. Why does that matter?
This could be not like a little off base, but oh, sorry. Did I interrupt someone? Oh, sorry. No.
No,
Oh,
you didn't. Go ahead, MG.
oh, okay. I was just gonna say, I'm not sure about this, but it seems to me like this whole thing, even I don't know, there's a line that I can't remember that I highlighted somewhere about when Aratomo was talking about the Garden of Eden, and he's like, well, basically, like, what's the point? What's the point of that? Like everything stays the same and nothing ever dies or grows or is cultivated. Like that feels like a pretty pointless excuse for a garden. And so the timing feels like it's everything. And when we were talking about the Horimoto, whatever, or Horimono earlier, I was thinking like, okay, why didn't he tell her whatever? I mean, part of that feels intentional too, in that like he knew by the time she maybe discovered it, she wouldn't need to go and find the treasure or find her sister anymore. Like there would no longer be a point in that. So maybe there's something about maybe, I don't know if intentionality of her leaving and coming back, but that feels to me like it's all in good time, sort of like she's remembering things as much as she's trying to not lose her memory. It does seem like things are coming back to her in a way that feels like the timing is ripe or something. I don't know.
How could she
This
have
is
ever found out about the tattoo in the garden on her own? There's no way that she could have ever done that because it wasn't like she was going to be standing in the mirror like, you know, and let me draw the garden too. And now let me, okay. Like that part of the story I did not really care for. I'm like, that is I mean, I like it, but she would have never, ever
Yeah.
found out if Tetsuji didn't come along.
Agreed, because Aritomo said he never wanted to write anything down. So like in the end, did he actually wanted to find out? Because he's like his whole philosophy is like don't put anything on paper. And that's exactly what they did to make this connection.
But he did that right before he walked off and like was like, well, I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah. All game over. Everything I ever said, just
Mind games.
Right. Plus Sekigawa, the guy who came, with the troop from Japan, he's the one who has all the information about it too, that tells her about it. When he turns up, he ends up telling her what's going on, and what's happened with the Golden Lily, the whole thing. He also, between Sekigawa and Tatsuji, she ends up finding out, he really did have this mission, or Sekigawa certainly thinks, he had a mission and that he was supposed to come back. It was sort of like that section when they were talking with him on page 310 and 311, where she cleaned up the garden and said, now it's perfect. And then he took the leaves out of the bag and threw them back around and said, now it's just right. And it was the same where at the end, he talks about a Hiroshi will always leave a section of the Horimono empty as a symbol that it is never finished, never perfect. And she said, like the leaves you scattered on the lawn, a reminder that nothing can ever be perfect. And so her life is never going to be perfect. But also this Sekigawa, who certainly brought, I think you're right, Lee. I think, how would she have ever known any of this between Sekigawa and Tatsuji? Somebody hadn't pointed it out to her, because like we knew Magnus was looking for the treasure as like a fun thing to do, but he didn't have all the information they had, and he didn't realize that Aritomo was involved with it. I thought it was so sad that they chose to have Magnus killed by the General Yap or whoever was that came over the treasure. Like he stepped up and said, I'll lead you to the treasure, when Aritomo just said, yeah, there is no treasure, it's a joke. That Magnus was the one to step up and protect everybody by going with them. I like Magnus a lot. I mean, I felt like he was the one character I really liked in this book.
And then going off of that, like, what was the whole deal with the little skinny missing persons stone that she found? Remember that? Like, when she goes out after Emily dies
Yeah.
and she leaves
was,
the burning
That was
things.
Aritomo's
joss
grave
sticks.
marker.
Yeah, and then like back behind those was a skinny stone with just Aritomo's name, and she's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's like
On
because."
page
And she was like,
325.
"I thought Emily hated him. Like, why would she?"
Right. She decided nobody should live without a grave. She said that she made a gravestone for him that nobody should go unremembered, but it was hidden in
Right.
the
Like, why wouldn't
forest.
she have told, especially?
Yun Ling, why wouldn't she say,
Yeah.
I put up a stone because I felt bad?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but Frederick said he did tell her.
Oh, right. And
Oh, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
right, right.
More
Huh.
of the forgetting.
She's like, why didn't
Wow.
you tell me? And he said, I did.
And that's like the one time where it was like, oh, she forgot something. That was really interesting. I forgot about that. I forgot about that.
It's
This
appropriate.
is-
We're all forgetting because there's so much craziness in here.
I know this is such a good discussion. I feel like I'm going backwards now because I have thoughts as you're all talking. But I was really enjoying the imagery of like a canoe going across a river and thinking of Aritomo in that way. Going back to when when Young Lynx first started working with him, and a lot of his observations were about how much anger she held on to. And I think that if we think over the time of her working in the garden to then towards the end of the book, as we see her reflecting and putting some of these pieces together of the story that she was maybe not aware of, we can kind of see a journey of letting some of that anger go. And even in talking about the dream that she had and why she's shooting a bow with no arrow, is because I almost see that as a representation of her anger, like the tension that she's pulling back on the bow, and she's releasing this weapon, this embodiment of her anger, and it's heading towards Aritomo, and maybe he's more of a representation of the Japanese and all that it entails in terms of what she felt after being in the camps, and what she learned about if he was working with Operation Golden Lily. And so she's finally releasing this, but there's no real arrow. So has she forgiven him? Has she let go of that anger? And I don't know, then he falls, so I'm not sure.
Well, it's the fall, I mean, I really liked what Rachel was saying about, the idea of the, the boat crossing the river, and then one not needing the boat anymore. But I mean, what do I know? But I'm thinking that not needing the boat anymore, because you've gone through that. It's not, you're not, punching a hole in it so nobody can ever travel on it again. You're not, you're not destroying it. And I think that's what I'm still uncertain of, is that okay? And again, okay, it's a dream, but he falls. He falls. So if you're talking about, so that's different to me than somebody crossing over, right? This is he falls. Now, of course, we know there's not an arrow, but there's, for her to, you know, earlier when he doesn't have an arrow, the paper crinkles that he's shooting at, right? So there's a force here. There's actually a violent force on her part, and I just have a question about it. I'm not sure. I have no answers, but I'm just wondering that, you know, and again, she didn't have the dream, but she's recollecting the dream, and that's kind of important here, right? Because she says, earlier in our reading, I can't, all I wanted to do is to forget, but now all I want to do is remember, right? Well, she's remembering this. This is a a dream memory that she has, and at the time, did she just want to sort of kill the memory? Because remember, that's, she didn't have the dream after she left until we learn of it for the first time.
But a lot of times people can't remember their dreams, and until you're triggered that you see something that's like, oh, I dreamed about that last night or whatever. And the fact that the dreams may be triggered by being in Ugiri, and when she's away from there, none of that enters her mind. She's busy with work and other things in her mind, but when her mind is still in Ugiri, the dream comes back to her. When people have recurring dreams, over a period of time, usually there's something that triggers those, and it can be the place you're in. So I feel like for her, that Ugiri being in the garden brings back those memories of that dream to her. But when she's not there, the dreams aren't there, and she may have them, but she doesn't remember them. It doesn't come back to her. That's just something, I just
Yeah,
read
no, I get
I just
that.
read Dan Brown's book, A Secret of Secrets. It's all about like local consciousness and stuff. So I'm all about like what people are thinking about in their dreams and how they work.
Yeah.
Jenny reads like 6 books at once, by the way. Everybody knows that. So
That's a tough book, Jenny. I'm 150 pages in. I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, it's long, but it's super
though.
interesting.
Yeah.
Like about how the mind works and what consciousness really is.
I don't know if this ties into the discussion we're having now, which I love, but I will say for me, at the end of the story, I'm going to sound a little bit like a sap, or maybe a lot like a sap with this, but I got some Notebook vibes I don't, if anybody has seen The Notebook, okay? So what I feel like the depth of Aratomo and Youngling's love was more suggested the whole book long and not really just straight out called out. We mentioned it before in other weeks, like the word love doesn't even show up. And now that you know that this older woman, where the aphasia is definitely setting in, has now tried to recollect all those beautiful times, it made me kind of sad that we didn't get the full blossom of what was going on, because when she's retelling the story, she's old. So she may not have all the facts in place about how deep they were in love and some of the more fun times. And she's just sort of recalling the kind of events that, fall in line with this story, but we're not really getting the whole story. Give me some Notebook vibes, by the way. Also, I also thought it was a little bit like Edward Scissorhands, because at the end of Edward Scissorhands, it's the woman, it's Ryder talking about Edward, and I had some of that too. Um,
He could
more
have
of
helped with
like
the garden, Edward Scissorhands cleaning up at the end.
true. Um, that's all from like a love perspective, not so much specific this, that, or the other thing. I was a little bit sad to find out that we didn't maybe get the whole story, and we didn't really see how beautiful this relationship was when it was going through, because as she's retelling it, she's obviously lost some of her faculties. Like Karen said, she's got most of them, or it seems like she does, but maybe she doesn't. And we miss out on some of those more beautiful moments.
Not a more overt Hallmark movie, right, Derek?
Right.
But their relationship should never have happened. I mean, he was a bloody Jap, um,
Yes.
who represented everything bad. She never should have had anything to do with him other than her esteem for his art and then willingness to
Love
learn.
for her
So
sister.
I don't think that that relationship would have been understood. I mean, yes, their close circle got it. I mean, Frederick was kind of miffed about it, but I don't think the rest of the world would have understood their love.
I mean, like the relationship with Tominaga too.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
I'm glad, like when I was reading his story, I was like, oh, tell me they're lovers. They have to be lovers. Um, but it never alluded to it, but like their relationship, like, I mean, you don't get into somebody's plane to die just for your best friend. Like it, I interpreted the two of them as being lovers. And in the end, when she was like, I'll get naked in front of you. I don't care. You're not into this. Um, it's yet another relationship that kind of should not have happened, the same way with her, according to the cultural mores at the time, same with her and Aritomo. So it's like yet another parallel between the two of their lives
Mm.
that was just kind of an interesting. I don't know. I interpreted their relationship as that of lovers. I don't know if anybody else did, but when I was hearing
Completely.
him tell his story, that's absolutely how I saw that.
I thought it was interesting that we really don't know how old Aritomo is and what the age difference is between them. Because I was going back through the book and chronicling Yun Ling's age, which she gives very specific dates, the year she was born. She was 19 when this happened, and you can extrapolate it out to like she's 65 at the end of the book. And we knew when Magnus was sort of born because it was like at the beginning of the Boer War, and that he's having his 73rd birthday party. But there's no, at any point do they tell you a way to figure out how old Aritomo is, and I gotta feel he's considerably older than Yunling. That that they're not close in age, and I thought that was an interesting choice to sort of let you know how old the other people were, but not to really give you any idea of how old he was, and that part of their relationship. Like not only that, why is she with this guy that's a Japanese and she hates everything about the Japanese, but he is considerably older than her. And then I was also interested in your question here about how they spend so much time talking about the hormonal process in this. And I'm going to put Rachel on the spot here because I know you said you had tattoos, but like when they talked about how incredible painful it was and that you get addicted to it and like you can't wait to go back and have them do it some more, I was really intrigued by that idea. Like, I don't know, it's like it hurts so good or whatever. I mean,
It's a thing.
so,
It's like Pringles. You don't like very few people have only one. You either have none, like I only have 4, and I have of my friends who are tattooed, I have the fewest among them. Um, Now, granted, I have them on my back, behind my ear, and on my forearm, so neither of them are very painful places to tattoo. But like where she has hers, it's gonna vary in pain. Like some places, the shoulder blades aren't really gonna hurt at all. Like I played my Nintendo Switch while I was getting that, but like other places, like along the spine, it's very 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 painful the closer it gets to the spine. But it is meditative. Like you have to sit very still for hours for prolonged periods of time. Like you're in your head basically. So I can absolutely see how it is meditative, and it's
So you
art. Like,
would you felt like she did, right? That there was, I guess that like I had a discussion with my therapist on Sunday, and I was saying, why the hell can't I meditate? Right? I mean, it was like, what's wrong? What's the deal? And he said, well, it's not like it's an easy thing to do, but I guess I wonder the what was that state like?
well, I do, at least for me. So my brain is not a great place to be in. I'm not very good company for myself. So when you're doing something like that, you have a focus point. So a lot of times in meditation, people focus on the breath. With tattooing, you can focus
Yes.
on that point, and it's much, much, much easier to focus on that point because that point is pain. It's in your face yelling at you because you can feel it. Does anybody else here? I'm talking like I'm the only one. Does anybody else here have tattoos? Am I the only one? Yeah, Lee. You only have one? Oh.
Was
But
it painful? I mean, is it like when he talks about how deep the knife
It's a
goes
big
in certain
one.
points?
And it wasn't really painful. I was terrified. I was like, my mom kind of made me get it.
Your mom made you get it?
She like was like, you could get because she had got this one tattoo, and then when she like a little while later, she's like, you could get this tattoo too. Um, and then I got it like a year later. Um, but so for my tattoo, I didn't know anything about it. I just like went and got it. And at one point the guy's wife came in who was also a tattooist at that place, and she made this face. And I'm like, "What?" Cuz it's on my leg, on my shin. And she's like, "Why are you using that needle?" And he kind of shot her a look like, "Shut up." Um, so I guess like depending on like the different needles and all kinds of things and the location. So like I was thinking kind of similar, like I was comparing my tattoo also, Rachel, while I was reading. I'm like, why is it so painful? And I feel like
the
that
tapping,
style is
yeah,
just
that style is
tremendously
more.
more painful because he talks about how like he does different depths and also like I think the different inks, have different chemicals and reacts to your skin and the blood and the healing process and um
Not sure how well people can see this, but there's areas where there's thicker lines. That was one set of needles. And then she's a watercolor artist. So there's a gradient, which was then another set of like an array of 9 needles tied together to get the gradient colors. So it's all different types of needles to get different looks on the tattoo.
What
and
is
mine
that?
was done
The Ravens,
entirely
what
with
are
just
those?
a single needle,
They're Raven
like a pen.
crows. I really like Raven. It's either Hugin and Munin from Thought and Memory from Odin, or crows because I love how like carefree and sassy they are. So depending if I'm feeling philosophical and pensive, it's their ravens, or if I'm feeling, I don't know, childlike and mischievous, then they're crows. So it depends on when you ask me
So
what they
if
are.
Doc does it, like Edgar Allan Poe, you'll choose the other.
Yeah.
What, geez, that's really fascinating what the two of you said. I mean, I thought I went through pain getting my ears pierced. Um, It's like nothing.
But it is something you can focus on. Like,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's
no, no,
why
I
it's
guess
meditative.
yeah, that's the thing. But you
Wait,
know,
but hold on. How can you focus on the pain? Like if you focus on pain, it hurts more.
My tattoo
Right?
guy talked the entire time. So
Ugh.
So is that
I like
distracting you, Lee, from the pain? Right,
I think so. I don't even really remember it. It was
Right,
I
but Rachel, you said you focused on the pain because you don't want to be in your head.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
So I mean, right, that's two different ways. Okay. Yeah. All right. Cool.
No,
Okay.
the other thing that with the tattoos too is that, yes, I mean they're, that's why, I asked the question because, I mean, God, I have like all these references to tattoos, but it was not only something there's, but it was, I mean, the first thing that Aang mentions is the artistic quality of it, right? That's the first thing. Then the pain comes, then she becomes used to the pain, but the art of it, which he compares to gardening, right? The same kind of art that goes into the tattoo is, compared to, obviously the, major image of the book. So yeah, Lee, you said something earlier that, and you nodded in agreement, MG, where you mentioned, how could she see this stuff on her back, right? So I'm thinking that you couldn't she?
She used mirrors to be able to see it, but you can't see everything. It's not the same as being able to look, right on it. I mean, she had mirrors set up so she could look at her back. Because if you remember the first night he worked on her, she was like, it's horrible. It's
Yeah, yeah.
all swollen and bloody and it looks awful. And, what have you done to me? And he's like, it just takes time and work till it's all going to be finished. I thought it was interesting the progression, though, Lenny, where suddenly his artwork, but in the beginning, where they talk about how the only people being tattooed were like prisoners
Yeah.
and to identify prisoners so people would know. Then it was like guild members. So, like, we're all firemen and now we all have fireman tattoos that nobody knows about. And yet they think they're artwork, but everybody keeps them super secret. Like, nobody wants them to be seen. And that's different. Like, today, people who have tattoos, artwork on them, my nephew and his wife are covered in tattoos and they wear clothes all the time, that are revealing them. But in here, it seems like everybody who has these, like Magnus and Yunling and other people, they don't want anybody to see this fabulous artwork they have on them. It's
Kills
like a big
me
secret.
inside. Kills me inside. It's like buying a Picasso and keeping it in your clothes closet. Like, I don't know. I mean, I know it's a generational thing, but also I like Frederick until he looked at her tattoo and said,
Now, I'm
what
on there.
did
It's
he
on
do? Like
319.
that, I suddenly
Right.
persona
When he
non
was
grata.
discussed, he was disgusted by it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Reading
look
about tattoos,
grotesque.
there was a time when they were thought very negatively in the Japanese culture, and
Yes.
Right.
there was a
Because they
change.
were only on prisoners.
Yeah. No, you're right.
and I
But
looked up actually, I also right away looked up those tattoos and then also the prison tattoos. And it's so funny, like so many like cool people are getting those and I was like, those are that's those Japanese prison tattoos. All the cool people are getting their like
oh
stripes
yeah,
and things.
and I think it is, partly generational, right? I mean, it definitely,
But yet it comes and goes. Like, I'm going to say from when I was growing up, nobody had tattoos. There were nobody, but back, obviously, this was going on in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, people having this done, and then it went away. I mean, I didn't know anybody who had a tattoo. And no kids had tattoos. I mean, the big thing was get your ears pierced. That was about as exciting as it got.
understand. But I still think that the description of the tattoo is pretty damned important. Like on 319, and this is after he says awful, right? On my back stands a gray heron. A temple emerges from the clouds. Exquisite drawing of flowers and trees only seen in the forests of the equator climb up from my hip. Arcane, inexplicable symbols have been sewn in the tattoos. Symbols I have never been able to decipher: triangles, circles, hexagons, their strokes primitive as the earliest Chinese writing burned into tortoise shells.
That's the section that I thought of. If anybody here gets National Geographic, the current actual issue talks about the cultural anthropological importance of tattoos that cultures had all across the world, all through history. So, I mean, there's also that whole component too.
So here's the question. This is really vividly described. She has no problem seeing this. And, I have a mirror in my bathroom on the door. And there are times where I get freaked out because I'll be, I don't know, like trimming my beard, and all of a sudden I'm seeing myself from two angles. And so I know that, I believe she can see that she has looked at these, because it is so, I don't think somebody described point by point. So you've got this heron, then you've got this temple, and then you've got,
The meteor shower. I loved that. I
Yep.
wanna
Yeah,
get
the
that.
meteor showers in it.
yeah. And so, I mean, that's sort of by the by, whether she could actually see. I think she did.
I mean, but also
As mirror.
Tatsushi's doing it with a magnifying glass he's using to see all of it. So it's a lot of detail, which is hard for her to see in a reflection. So I'm sure she's talked to others who are looking directly at it. I mean, Aritomo probably talked through what was on there looking in the mirror, but Tatsushi's, got a magnifying glass to see all the tiny little things that are in there. So she
Nobody
can't possibly
painted.
see that in a mirror reflection.
But we don't know that.
And she
I
said
mean, we
nobody
can
else had
only
seen
go
it
with the text, right? What?
until
Right. But
that
you have
point.
to, well, you have to know how your eyes work. I mean,
Yeah, but the point is, if she is, you know, you don't, why would he include such a detailed description of all of this? I mean, because it's coming from her mind. He's like, uh, what's his face here? The one we don't like. Um, Frederick is not. He's not. He's saying this is just gross. He's not saying, anything about the exquisite detail.
Yes,
but he
but
does say it's a mixture of excitement, awe, and yes, even a hint of fear. And then he says they look grotesque, awful. But he does, he's so amazed, I think, when he first sees it. And don't forget, he loves her.
he's
And
a
I
jilted
think the
lover.
thought that Aritomo did all of this to her, was so close to her to be able to do all this. And he's loved her his whole life and hasn't been able to be with her and have that kind of closeness that she shared with Aritomo to be able to make that tattoo. I mean, I think that's why he thinks it's grotesque. Not that it is grotesque, but that he's appalled that he was that close to her and he could never be that close to her.
And I'm not going to, push this, more than the work, but she talks about exquisite drawings of flowers and trees seen only in the forests of the equator climb up from my hip. Okay. She is now, they climb up from my hip. Okay, but they're still on her back, right? I mean, she sees this. She sees this very clearly. I don't see how, whether it's mirrors or whether this is just, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this book that isn't, realistic in the sense of, well, realistic. I mean, there are mythical elements in it, and I think the important thing is that he's looking at it, and she is describing her life in this tattoo. This is her life, including the gray heron, right? Everything in that tattoo. And then, you get the meteor showers too. But everything is there. And so that, leaves the question, what was he trying to do by making this tattoo? What was he trying to do? He's always wanted to make one. Never tried before. Had done small tattoos, but not anything as expansive as this. So would you say, yeah, we never hear the word love between them. Was this an expression of what we would call love, or what?
I think he's possibly atoning for his sins in this expression of love. So he knows what he's been involved with. He knows. So at some point in time, she will put all the pieces together. But I think he is honoring her with all these separate vignettes.
Okay. Other ideas about that?
It's a very permanent way for him to literally make his mark on her.
And he's creating the garden on her in all the terms he describes, and all the symbols he describes.
Similarly to what you were saying, Karen, I feel like he was trying to say, like, your life is beautiful, like, because he's like, it's a very big honor to have this on you. And he was well known as like a beautiful woodblock artist and the gardener. So he was this like well-known artist, and then those tattoos are like really special. And he did it of her life.
Yeah, which goes to what Lee and Derek were saying. It's like, didn't say love, but it's like a final act of intimacy without sex and love and all. I mean, we know they did it, but it's symbolic of all that. What Lee and Derek were alluding to.
I feel like it's an expression of duty too. Maybe I'm the only one who's more sort of not cynical about him, but I feel like it's like the like combination of love and duty, or the meeting of love and duty. His revealing of where the treasure is felt to me like it was partly for her and partly for him, a way of his final act for his government without needing to fully I don't know, express it in any other way. So yeah, it felt a bit more complicated for me, but I'm still for the expression of love, just with like caveats maybe. Yeah.
Well,
But Sarah said, oh, sorry, Doc, go ahead.
Well, no, he's just a very hard character to define.
Yeah.
I feel great sympathy for young Ling. I don't like Aramana.
Yeah, mixed
I
reviews.
just like he's not like I couldn't be friends with him.
Too opaque, I think.
What's that?
I said he's a bit too opaque, I think. It's giving like I need
think there's
emotional
that opaqueness.
availability.
I admire his skill. I admire, the gentility that he shows towards her, even during the tattoo process. Although he also said, "Well, don't be fidgeting." But I think that he just does not engage my sympathy or empathy the way that she does. And maybe it's I think in a way, and maybe this is just maybe I'm just misreading here, but he's really never suffered in the way she has suffered. I mean, I think I'm accurate in that. I mean, he's always in control.
But he lost a wife and child. So I think he has had suffering earlier in his life, just a different kind of suffering. But he's a
Yeah.
different kind of person. I think he lives more in his head. I think, like to what MG's saying, he has a different mindset towards everything, and he's not wearing his emotions on his sleeve. Everything has a purpose to him. I
Yeah,
think it's
see,
interesting to look at this point, like at the last paragraph in the book, just talking
Mhm.
about the heron. The lotus flowers are opening in the first rays of the sun. Tomorrow's rain lies on the horizon, but high up in the sky, something pale and small is descending, growing in size as it falls. I watch the heron circle the pond, a leaf spiraling down to the water, setting off silent ripples across the garden. And once again, as we started, the leaves being a very big part of this story, and the heron, he sees the heron in a pond right before he leaves when he goes away, and there's a heron in the pond in the beginning, and now the heron has come back in the pond, sending ripples out, sort of like Aritoma's life touches you, and send ripples out to touch everybody he came in contact with, like in
And
your.
I also thought about, what about Ari Tomo's character of when the CTs are there and Arimoto says, "Oh no, I don't know where the gold is. There's no gold." And Magnus says, "I'll take you there," because he wants to save everybody. And Arimoto, if we go through it, he actually knows where the gold is. And he knows that they're taking Magnus, they're going to kill Magnus. I mean, what does that say about his character? There's no way Magnus was coming back because he didn't know where the gold was. He was going to be killed, but Aratoma let him take him instead of stepping up and saying, "All right, I know where it is. I'll take you to it." That says something horrible about his character.
No, I'm with you there. I had even forgotten about that. So yeah, no, I don't.
Or how many
I
more
just
lives would have been lost if the CTs got access to that kind of resources?
What's that?
It's also an individual versus larger picture thing. So let's say the CTs did find a treasure trove of gold and riches. How much better resource would they be to continue their work as terrorists, according to the perspectives of those in this book? So I could see, again, I'm not defending Aritomo. I'm not sure I even believe that angle, but I mean, it is an angle that he could have had in his mind when he was making that decision.
Yeah, I think that was a choice for him between duty to the emperor and helping Magnus, and Magnus was the one willing to step up and say, "I'll go." No, and I think Magnus knew he wasn't going to come back, that because first of all, he knew he wasn't going to be able to find the gold because, he'd been looking all this time and hadn't found it. He was just hoping to lead them away from his family, from his wife, and from Yun Ling and everybody he loved. And that's why I feel like he was like much more in a big gesture of love, Magnus. You could feel his love for his wife and his love for Frederick and for Yun Ling. And yet I couldn't feel Aritomo's love for Yun Ling. I couldn't feel that. I could only feel his sort of being the teacher and she was the student.
Yeah, he was. I mean, to me, he had the power from the beginning.
Yeah.
I feel like it plays into the one of the questions, Doc, that you gave us from the first call. That was like he's like this mythic creature where he's kind of untouched, sitting in his safe garden, and he like affects other people and has all this sort of power that's hidden and obvious, and um, he's other, and he's unknowable and ununderstandable by the people, the other people,
But
including me.
but
What
we're
if you
still relying 100% in this conversation on what Yun Ling is recollecting.
Mhm.
It may very well be something totally different or not complete, like I was saying before. I mean, never mind the love, but just in general. That's why I think when he drifts off into the jungle, who knows what that could have been? Maybe that's what she saw in her mind or whatever, and it was something totally different. I mean, not totally different, but maybe
Well, he
it wasn't
does
so,
disappear.
just
Right?
drift
He
off.
disappears. I
He
mean,
does disappear and people go look for him. I mean, they sent out search parties and planes and everything. So certainly wherever he went, nobody found him.
and yeah, but Derek, one of the things that is important is we what we have is the text. Okay, so yeah, there are things we don't know, we can't know, and why is that? In part, it's because Aang doesn't want us to know it, right? So that if he's mythic, um, and by being mythic, I mean, you don't know. I mean, if you think of myth and like traditional like Greek gods and goddesses, I mean, most of them you wouldn't want to be friends with, right? I mean,
Um,
there's because of their presence, because of who what they are. But I think it's important, all we have to do, all we have to go on is her memory. That's it. So that, yeah, it's really interesting to think of like, so, okay, so what is it? What is it that she's forgetting?
No, I think your point about it's what Aang wants us to know. It's what he wrote about what clues he wanted us to have and what he
Mhm.
didn't want us to have. So that's part of his mystery.
Yeah, yeah, very good. Yeah, because I think that the book it has to have a certain sense of mystery even at the end. Even when she's saying, "Okay, well, I'm not going to take the walking stick."
So is this a murder mystery?
I'm wondering if
That was,
he was
I don't know if I can
ever
evoke table slaps from the past, but if I could, maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll excuse me. Uh,
I wonder if he was ever actually like sent away or like, like if that whole argument and he got fired ever happened. And he was, sent there as a spy. And then I was just like going back, I was like, maybe I'll be able to find something. And I just happened to
oh, oh, oh,
come across on page 206. She says, I wonder if there's any truth in Tatsuji's suspicion that Aritomo had been sent to Malaya by the Emperor. The answer is elusive like ink in water. Um, so perhaps he, yeah, was duty bound to that Golden Lily operation.
And maybe he was smuggled out back to Japan. That's why nobody found him. Maybe Sakigawa had arranged for him to disappear in the forest and they picked him up and got him out of there and he went back to Japan and hung out and looked at his garden that was wrecked by the tennis court.
well,
And then later took up tennis.
there's a gap in her tattoo, and that sort of typifies, I think, much
The
of
gap in our knowledge.
the gap of the reader's knowledge, which I think is it's a pretty cool technique. I like that deliberately creating gaps for us. Yeah,
Yeah, just one extra comment.
sure.
I found the article, an interview with Tang
Mhm.
and in Asymptote, and I recommend it to you. It describes he describes his process in writing the book,
Mhm.
number of years it took him to do it. When he first drafted it, it was in consecutive order, and he said that's not interesting enough, so he broke it apart.
Yes,
He
yeah.
also describes that it wasn't complicated enough, so he started adding things to make it more interesting. So it's an interesting interview.
Yeah, that's a very good, sort of, look into the mind of the writer there.
I have that from Charles, and I will attach that when I send the final recording out. I'll attach that to it so everybody can read it if they haven't found that. I do have the website from Charles with that interview.
Okay, so this has been like so damn much fun for me.
Can I just say,
I don't
this
want it
is
to
super,
end.
This has been a
super
great
quick,
book.
super quick. I feel like a little bit getting started in the story that I don't know if I'm like a classics snob, but I have a hard time reading a book and getting and like thinking about it so deeply that was written in 2012. Like for some reason, I'm like, I've got this brain blood barrier of like books have to be written prior to 1800 or something for me to like be like, let's, really dissect. And it's interesting. I think that having discussions like this with all you smart people and everybody able to breaking it all down, I think that it really does show that, there are now I'm not going to say that this is a new classic. But I don't have any authority to say one way or the other, but I do appreciate that aspect of these classes, and then sort of getting out of my snobbish ways.
Yeah, Derek,
from,
when I write my book, it's going to be a new
if
classic.
it's not, there you go. I'm fine with it.
Derek,
We'll
though,
make that number one on the
25.
GA grad school list. Will be your book, Lee.
Yeah.
you can do it though,
That's
Derek.
right.
The book Ginny's talking about, because she finished Secret of Secrets. I just started it. It was printed like 2 months ago, but it's like tons of Prague history that Doc was at, and then just talking about noeticism, which is like, you know,
Yeah.
consciousness, and is it ethereal? Is it this? It's like stuff Rachel would totally dig. Like, it's, you know, again, you can analyze that book out the wazoo too, but it's like a Dan Brown beach read.
Right.
And yet, as he tells you at the beginning of that book, all the science that's in it is true.
That's the
And
thing with
he's
his
woven
books.
a story around real science, and
he
it's
does his books around real stuff.
yeah,
Like,
and the science in it is just crazy. Like, I had no idea about the science that was in this book. I have to say that if you haven't read it, it's a great book. And I would recommend to you, if you like Victorian time period, like in the early 1800s, the C.S. Harris
Yes.
series about Sebastian Sincere. He's a viscount that solves crime. But every book is about social issues in England in that time period. So it's not just about it's a murder mystery. Absolutely. Every story has a murder mystery, but every story is about things that go on in that time period, in the Victorian time period. So it talks about colonialism and the poverty in London, and all different kinds of things. It's a great series.
It is a good
Kendall hooked us up on that, and it's really good. Just like
I
Maisie
finished
Dobbs, he put me on both of those, and I read every single one. I'm about
Yeah,
9 books into this one.
I finished the Harris.
Did you finish them? Yeah.
Yeah.
I just I'm in the middle of one today, so I'm
And we are, in a way, Ginny, both you and I, we're like, we're reading geeks. I mean,
right. We are, and we're kindred reading geeks. We like reading a lot of the same types of books.
I
So
know. Which, so anyway, I wanted to say thanks so much. I just love meeting with you. You're so smart. You're so enthusiastic. I was telling Ellen, the love, that this is like, meeting with you is like my best classes at GA. That's what it's like. It's just like my best damn classes. Right. Um, so so I think I told you before. So thanks for that. And frankly, I haven't given a lot of table slaps recently because I worry. I think I do play the guitar, and so I have to worry about the hands. And I don't want to break the. But anyway, but you deserve way more than I gave. So I'm hoping that we can return. I mean, Ginny knows that I have this bee in my bonnet about the novel Horse, which is a wonderful, wonderful book.
loved it. It's a great book.
Yeah, and then I got the other bee in my bonnet. I got
Irish poets.
Irish poets, yeah, I mean, with the political background. Um, so we'd be looking at like the Irish Revolution, the Civil War. I mean, I did my doctorate in Irish literature, so I figure I got to get some Irish stuff back, and then also the Troubles, the recent Troubles, and the two primary poets, but there are many others that I didn't, that we could look at, would be Yeats and Seamus Heaney, who is probably my favorite ever. So I hope, and we'll let you know when Horse is coming up. And I was thinking about, I mean, I remember Kendall said you can't do more than 2 of these a year. I'm thinking, spring
Might get a third one in there.
I think doing like a spring, because see we get busier in the spring, right? You have your gardens, you have all this stuff. But if we do the poems, that's not going to take the time for you and for us that a novel like Horse would do. So I'm thinking about putting, and Ginny, I think, is with me on that. I sort of push her into these books, and
And
I'm
someone
all good. I am loving this.
mentioning,
This
like,
is
critical
awesome.
analysis.
So, and I so appreciate all of you coming on every week to do this because it really is fun. It's been great.
Yeah. So thanks.
Yep. And
Everyone's
you'll,
fine.
I'll be sending out the last recording
Don't
and
worry. We'll
and
let you
then
know
I'll
in
keep you
advance.
posted. I have the list to let you know what's coming up next.